I never asked to be part of dragon politics. I only wanted to keep my job and pay off my student loans. That is the whole truth of how this story begins. And if you had told me 6 months ago that I would end up rocking baby dragons to sleep in a cold metal hallway, I would have laughed and asked what you were smoking. My name is Dale Okafor. Before all this, I was a night shift janitor at a hospital in Cincinnati. I mopped floors, emptied trash bins, and listened to old radio stations while everyone else slept. It was quiet work, lonely, some nights. But it paid the bills mostly, and I liked the silence. Then the Draken Dominion arrived. They came in ships that blotted out the moon, and for 3 days the whole world held its breath, waiting to see if this was the end of everything. It was not. The Dominion, it turned out, were not conquerors. They were traders. Big, ancient, dragon-like beings who had been flying between stars since before humans learned to write. They wanted resources, they wanted trade routes, and strangely enough, they wanted workers. Unskilled labor, their treaty said. Volunteers welcome. Pay is generous. Housing and food provided. I remember reading that line on the government website and thinking it had to be a trick. But my sister needed help with her mortgage, and my loans were not going to pay themselves, and generous pay from an alien empire sounded a lot better than another decade of minimum wage. So I signed up. Along with about 2,000 other people from every corner of the world, I boarded a shuttle and left Earth for the first time in my life. They placed me on a ship called Vale Thyrix. It was enormous, easily a kilometer long, and it was not a warship or a cargo hauler. It was a hatchery, a floating nursery for dragon eggs, built to carry the next generation of the Dominion's royal bloodline across the stars until they were old enough to rule. I did not know that at first. All I knew was that my new job was cleaning maintenance corridors on the lower levels, the same as I had done back home, except now the floors were made of some strange silver metal that never seemed to get dirty, and the air smelled faintly of ash and cinnamon. Nobody explained the details of dragon childhood to a janitor. Why would they? I was staff, not family. I pushed my cart through empty hallways, fixed broken pipes when the automated systems could not, and kept my head down, the same as I always had. It took me 2 weeks to learn something was wrong. The first sign was the drones. Small floating machines, the size of dinner plates, would zip past me every night around the same time, scanning the corridors with red light. I asked one of the dragon engineers, a scaled woman named Ethera who ran the coolant systems with me, what they were looking for. Hatchlings, she said, not looking up from her console. They keep leaving the nest. Leaving? Like, running away? Crawling away, mostly. They cannot walk properly yet, but yes, every night, at least one goes missing from the royal nursery, sometimes more. The nursemaids are losing their minds trying to find them before the king notices. The king, I repeated, as in, an actual king? Ethera gave me a look, the kind you give someone who clearly has not read the orientation packet. King Thessarax Vale 9, ruler of the Dominion. His clutch hatched 6 weeks ago. 5 hatchlings, heirs to the throne, and apparently none of them want to stay where they are supposed to stay. I did not think much of it after that conversation. Royal baby dragons running away sounded like a problem for people much more important than me. I went back to my cart, my mop, and my quiet corridors, and for a few more nights, nothing changed. Then, on a Tuesday, if ships in deep space can be said to have Tuesdays, I found the first one. I was working in a lower coolant chamber, a narrow room lined with pipes that hummed with a low mechanical heartbeat. It was cold down there, colder than most of the ship, because the coolant systems needed it that way. I had my jacket zipped all the way up and I was humming along to the radio I always brought with me, an old habit from my hospital days, when I heard a small sound behind a support pipe. It was not loud. It was barely anything at all, a thin, trembling noise, like a kitten that had lost its way. I crouched down and found it. A hatchling, small enough to fit in my 2 hands, scales the color of copper mixed with green, its wings still soft and folded tight against its body. It was shivering so hard its whole tiny frame shook, and its eyes, when it looked up at me, were wide and dark and utterly without understanding of what I was. It only knew that it was cold and alone, and something large was now looking at it. I do not know what made me do what I did next. Instinct, maybe. I had spent years around scared, sick people in that hospital, and there is a certain look that fear puts on a face, whether that face has skin or scales. I knew that look. I had seen it 1,000 times. So I picked it up. It did not fight me. It pressed itself against my chest, right over my heart, and made a small sound that I can only describe as relief. Its whole body was cold, colder than it should have been. colder than I later learned was safe. I unzipped my jacket, tucked it inside against my shirt, and zipped back up, leaving just enough room for it to breathe. Within a minute, it was asleep. I sat there on an overturned crate for the rest of my shift, not daring to move much, listening to a baby dragon breathe against my chest while my radio played old songs nobody in this galaxy had ever heard before. When my shift ended, I carried it, still sleeping, up to the nursery level and handed it to the first nursemaid I found, a tall, silver-scaled dragon who looked at me like I had performed a miracle. "Where did you find him?" she asked, cradling the hatchling with visible relief. "Coolant room, sub-level 4. He was cold." She frowned, studying the little one in her arms. "He should not have been cold. The nursery is kept at standard royal temperature." "Maybe standard isn't warm enough," I said, and shrugged, because what did I know about dragon biology? I went back to my cart and finished my shift and thought that was the end of it. It was not. The next night, I found 2 hatchlings in the same coolant room, curled together behind the same pipe. The night after that, 3. By the end of that week, I had learned all 5 of their names, though I could not pronounce most of them properly, and they had apparently learned that the coolant room, and specifically the corner where I liked to sit and hum along to my radio, was the best place in the entire ship to be. I should have reported it properly, the way protocol demanded. I did mention it to my supervisor once or twice, in passing, the way you mention a leaky faucet. But every time I tried to explain the full situation, one of the hatchlings would climb into my lap during my break, or fall asleep against my boots while I worked, and somehow the words never came out right. It felt strange to explain that royal dragon princes and princesses had decided a janitor's jacket was better than a palace nursery. It felt like something I was not allowed to say out loud, even though nobody had ever told me to keep it secret. Looking back, I think I liked having them there. My job on Earth had been quiet in a way that sometimes felt empty. Here, for an hour or 2 each night, I had company. Small, scaly, occasionally drooling company, but company all the same. Word travels fast on a ship full of dragons, though, especially when 5 royal heirs keep vanishing from their nests every single night. By the second week, the nursemaids were no longer confused. They were frightened. I overheard 2 of them talking in the hallway outside the nursery, their voices low and urgent. "If the king finds out we have lost them again, he will replace the entire nursery staff. We have not lost them. We know exactly where they go, sub-level 4, every single night, without fail. Then why have we not simply moved the nest there? Because it is a coolant maintenance corridor, not a royal chamber. And because none of us understand why they go there at all. There is nothing special about that room." I remember hearing that and almost laughing, quietly, to myself. There was nothing special about the room. But there was something, apparently, about sitting quietly with someone who did not mind being climbed on, who kept a place warm without being asked, and who hummed old songs that meant nothing and everything at the same time. The nursemaids tried a few things after that. They warmed thick blankets and left them in the nest. They played recordings of soft dragon lullabies through the nursery speakers. They even tried moving the whole nest to a room closer to my coolant chamber, hoping proximity alone would help. Nothing worked. The hatchlings still found their way to me, night after night, crawling through vents and ducts with a determination that seemed far too strong for creatures so small. I did not know, at the time, how much trouble I was causing. I did not know that the royal nursery's failure was being reported all the way up to the king himself, or that his patience, according to the staff, was running dangerously thin. All I knew was that every night, 5 small dragons wanted to be near me, and I did not have the heart to turn them away. The night everything changed started out like any other. I had finished most of my rounds and settled into my usual corner of the coolant room, radio playing low, when the hatchlings arrived one by one, crawling out from a service vent near the floor. The copper and green one, the one I secretly thought of as the leader, always came first. Then the 2 silver ones, who liked to fight over who got to sit closest to me. Then the small golden one, who was always last and always the sleepiest. And finally the deep red one, who never made a sound at all, but simply climbed up my arm and settled across my shoulders like a scarf. Within 20 minutes, all 5 were asleep, draped across my lap, my arms, and my shoulders in a pile of scales and soft breathing. I remember humming along to a slow song on the radio, feeling the warmth of 5 small bodies pressed against me, and thinking that whatever strange turn my life had taken, this particular moment was not a bad one. That is when the temperature in the room changed. I do not know how else to describe it. There was no draft, no open door that I could see, but suddenly the air felt different, heavier somehow, the way the air feels right before a storm. I looked up, and standing in the doorway of the coolant room, filling nearly the entire space, was a dragon unlike any I had seen before. He was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the largest crew member I had met, his scales a deep, burning red that seemed to hold light rather than reflect it. His eyes, when they found mine, glowed faintly, like twin embers. I did not need anyone to tell me who he was. Something in the way the air itself seemed to bend around him told me exactly who had just walked into my little coolant room. King Thessarac's Veil 9. I froze. I am not ashamed to admit that. 5 sleeping royal heirs were currently using my body as a mattress, and the most powerful being in this entire star nation was staring down at me with an expression I could not read at all. I thought about standing up. I thought about apologizing. I thought about 100 different things I could say, and every single one of them died in my throat, because moving even slightly might wake the hatchlings, and something told me that waking them at this exact moment would be a very bad idea. So I did the only thing that made sense. I stayed still, and I stayed quiet, and I let him look. The king did not roar. He did not raise his voice or make any sudden movement at all. Instead, slowly, carefully, like a mountain deciding to bow, he lowered himself down until his enormous head was level with mine. His eyes moved from one sleeping hatchling to the next, counting them, I realized, making sure all 5 were accounted for and safe. "They have fled the royal nest every night for 3 weeks, he said at last. His voice was deep and quiet, nothing like I had expected. "Do you know why?" "No, Your Majesty," I managed to say. "Truly, I do not. They just kept showing up here. I did not know what else to do but let them stay." He was silent for a long moment, studying me the way you might study a puzzle that had finally started making sense. Then, slowly, he extended one massive claw and touched it, so gently it barely made a sound, against the back of his smallest daughter's spine. She did not even stir. "For 140 years, he said, the royal nursery has kept its chamber at what we call the cold trial temperature. It is tradition. Long ago, before our healers understood hatchling biology as well as they do now, this cold was believed to strengthen a young dragon, to weed out weakness before it could grow into the throne. My own father endured it. I endured it. And when my clutch hatched, I ordered the nursery kept the same way, because it was tradition, and tradition is not something one questions lightly in my family." He paused, and something in his ancient face shifted, something that was not quite sadness but was close to it. "I did not know," he continued, "that the cold trial had long since stopped serving any real purpose. Our healers fixed the true danger a century ago. The cold remained only because no one thought to ask if it should. My children were not being tested. They were simply cold and frightened and alone in a large empty nest every single night, and they went looking, on their own small legs, for the one place on this entire ship where someone made them feel warm and safe. I did not know what to say to that, so I said the only honest thing that came to mind. They were just scared, sir. That is not really a dragon thing or a human thing. It is just a kid thing. Anybody who found them shivering like that would have done the same." Something shifted in the king's face. "Dragons, I would learn much later, do not smile the way humans do. Their mouths are not built for it. But there is a softening around the eyes, a change in the way the light catches their scales, that means something very close to the same thing. I saw that softening now." "Perhaps," he said, "but you are the one who did it. Every night, for 3 weeks, while trained nursemaids and healers and engineers tried blankets and songs and warmer rooms, you simply held them until they stopped shaking. That is not a small thing. That is not a small thing at all." He rose slowly to his full height again, careful not to disturb the sleeping pile of hatchlings still draped across me, and looked toward the doorway, where I now noticed 2 nursemaids and a guard had gathered, watching the scene with wide, uncertain eyes. "Warm the nursery," the king said to them, his voice carrying the weight of an order that would not be questioned. "Immediately. Remove every trace of the cold trial from this ship. I do not care what tradition says. My children will never again spend a single night shivering in an empty nest while calling out for someone to come." The nursemaids bowed and hurried away at once, already speaking quickly into their communicators. The king watched them go, then turned his glowing eyes back to me. "You have no contract renewal listed for this station, I am told," he said. "That will change tonight." "Sir, I really am just a janitor. I did not mean to interfere with anything. I did not even know they were royal at first. I just saw a scared kid and I picked him up." "That," the king said, "is precisely why it worked. You did not see a title. You did not see a crown that had not yet been placed on anyone's head. You saw a frightened child, and you responded the way any decent parent would. My nursemaids, for all their training, could not stop seeing the crown. It made them careful in ways that, I think, my children could feel. Careful is not the same as warm. He crouched again, lowering himself so that his enormous head was nearly at my eye level, and for a long moment, the most powerful dragon in the galaxy simply watched his children sleep, safe and warm and unafraid, in the arms of a human janitor from Cincinnati. "Effective tonight," he said quietly. "You hold the title of Royal Hatchery Warden, First Class. I confess I am inventing this title as I speak it, since no such position has ever existed before. But it seems only right that the one who succeeded where an entire nursery staff could not should carry some mark of that success." I wanted to argue. I wanted to explain, again, that I really was just a janitor, that I had not trained for anything like this, that surely there was someone more qualified. But 5 small dragons were sleeping soundly against me, breathing slow and even for what I would later learn was the very first time since they had hatched, and something about that fact made every argument feel very small and very unimportant. "I will do my best, Your Majesty," I said instead. "I have no doubt of that," he replied. "You have already proven it, 5 times over." That was 8 months ago now. The nursery was rebuilt within the week. Gone was the cold, echoing chamber the hatchlings had been fleeing every night. In its place stood a warm, softly lit room, filled with cushions and low lighting, and, at the king's specific request, a corner set aside just for me, complete with an old radio I was allowed to bring from my quarters. I still mop floors sometimes, when the mood strikes me, old habits being difficult to fully let go of. But most of my days now are spent in that nursery, surrounded by 5 young dragons who have decided, without asking my opinion on the matter, that I make an excellent pillow. The copper and green one, whose name I can now pronounce correctly after months of practice, likes to fall asleep across my shoulders while I read to him from books that were shipped in specially from Earth, translated as best as the ship's systems could manage. The 2 silver ones still fight over who gets to sit closest to me, though these days it is more a game than a real argument. The golden one remains the sleepiest of the group and can often be found napping in odd places around the nursery, only to wake up and immediately crawl toward wherever I happen to be sitting. And the red one, still quiet, still gentle, has taken to resting his head against my knee during the evenings, listening to the radio with an expression I can only describe as deeply content. King Thessarax visits most evenings, slipping into the nursery quietly despite his enormous size, and simply watches. He rarely speaks much during these visits. He does not need to. I think, for a being who has ruled for longer than human civilization has kept written records, there is something deeply restful about watching his children sleep peacefully, without fear, without cold, without the shadow of an old tradition hanging over their small lives. One evening, not long ago, he asked me a question that has stayed with me since. "Do you know," he said, watching his smallest daughter sleep curled against my arm, "why I chose not to be angry with you that first night?" An outsider, holding my heirs, in a maintenance corridor no less. Many in my position would have reacted very differently. I admitted that I had wondered about that more than once. "Because," he said, "you did not look afraid of them. Every nursemaid, every guard, every healer who has ever handled my children has treated them, at least a little, like breakable treasures rather than children. You treated them like children who happen to be cold. There is a difference, and it is a difference my children could feel long before I understood it myself." I have thought about that conversation many times since. I did not come to this ship, to this strange corner of the galaxy, expecting to learn anything meaningful about kings or crowns or ancient traditions. I came because I needed a paycheck, and this job offered one. But somewhere between mopping floors and holding scared little dragons through cold nights, I learned something I think I already knew, deep down, from all those years working night shifts in a quiet hospital back home. Fear does not care what species you are. It does not check bloodlines or crowns or titles before it settles into a small, shivering body in the dark. And comfort, real comfort, does not require scales or fire or wings either. It only requires someone willing to notice, and to stay, and to be warm. You do not need to be a dragon to be what a scared child needs. You do not need a crown, or ancient magic, or any special power at all. You just need to be there, and be warm, and not let go. That, it turns out, is a language every species understands, no matter how many stars separate their worlds.